What's up, everybody? My name is Dell. This is Dell on Movies. Thanks for hanging out with me in here before. Thanks for hanging out with me again. I screwed up my own intro. That's all good. I'm glad to see that there are some people still here hanging out, waiting for me. I apologize. We're late, had some technical difficulties behind the scenes, and that always seems to be the case right at the beginning of the show when I really need something to happen. But we're here. Glad you're hanging around. Hope you're sticking around for the duration or however long you can stick around. It's going to be a great show tonight. My guest is a first timer to the channel. A few months back, been watching it really consistently ever since because he has great content. Recently reached some milestones. Uh, I'll let him tell you about that. But my guest is none other than Mr. Kenny Sparks, who's always sparking conversations. How you doing, Kenny?
Hey, hey, what's up, Del? Thank you so much for having me on, man. I'm actually doing really well, man. I'm excited to be here. Definitely excited to talk about the two movies that we're talking about tonight.
Cool, cool. Let everybody know what the milestone you just reached was.
So back on February 2nd, I just hit 1,000 subscribers. I'm still in disbelief about it, but yeah, man, I'm over the moon about it as well. It's not something I have to think about anymore. So yeah, man, 1,000 subscribers, and now I'm just working on getting those watch hours up so I can get towards that monetization.
There you go. Well, congratulations on that.
Thank
Watch
you.
hours should be coming.
Yeah,
Like I said, great content.
appreciate it.
Oh yeah, anytime, anytime. So, got a question. You were like a lot of YouTubers last night. You after the Super Bowl, you went
Hmm.
on and watched those trailers. A lot of those trailers that premiered last night.
Yeah.
What was your favorite one?
Well, I would definitely want to say like my favorite one was the Deadpool one. I know a lot of people are probably going to say the same thing, but yeah, the Deadpool one, I was over the moon about it, man. I did have some like, yo, they're really not going to show Wolverine kind of thing when everybody knows that he's in it. But my friend Zach from Zach Attack Reviews, he was like, well, you know it because you're a super nerd. Like the general public doesn't know that. I'm like, you know what? You're right. So, yeah, that was definitely my favorite, followed by Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. And I want to say after that, Wicked and Twisters. Twisters is the only one I'm like, really? But all the other three, I'm definitely excited about.
Kind of in that same boat, along the same lines on all of those. With Wicked, I read the book years ago, so I'm kind of
Okay.
curious to see how they're going to go. Are they going to be closer to the book? Are they trying to do the stage play? I'm not. I haven't really heard a whole lot about that, so I'm not real
Hmm.
sure.
Yeah,
But Cynthia Erivo is good either way you want to go because she can definitely sing. That's for sure.
that is for
And
damn sure. Yeah.
Deadpool,
Yep.
yes, yeah. Deadpool's my favorite trailer. Planet of
Hmm.
the Apes is really excited about, but I thought Deadpool had the better trailer.
Yeah.
And yeah, Twisters, I was like, I don't know about this deal.
Like
What's
so,
gonna
I've,
happen
I've
with this?
I watched the trailer. I feel my reaction to the trailer, and I'm just sitting here like, why? Like not even just like why in terms of making the movie, but I remember watching the one from the '90s and still feeling like, why? Why are you driving into the storm? Like I know you want to get
Yeah,
Dorothy set up. You know what I'm saying? And it's funny because when I was
yeah,
doing the trailer reaction, I was like, I can't believe I remember all these details. I haven't seen that movie in decades. But I know you try and get the science set up, but no, there has to be a better way to do that. There
yeah.
has to be a
There
better way to
has
do
to be,
this than driving into two tornadoes. Like that's insane.
especially a quarter of a century or more later, right?
Right.
We should have this figured out by now. We don't have to go into the storm.
Yeah, and the other
And
thing is like, am I supposed to feel bad for you? You did this to yourself. But yeah, so yeah, man, it's wild.
yeah, I think the big thing about the original movie was it was one of the earlier special effects
Yep,
beasts that was
100%.
around. Yeah, so people really love it for that. But the thing about when that movie came out, everybody didn't have a big flat screen TV. So once it was out of theaters, the biggest TV most people had
Mm,
was like 32 inches.
yeah,
So it didn't have the same effect watching it at home. so
absolutely. Yeah,
so it's gonna
it
be
takes like a special type of direction to get the big spectacle from the big screen to the small screen and still have it have the same effect. Like I think about like
Mhm.
Armageddon still has that same effect, small screen or big screen. Like it's still kind of the same impact. But yeah, it's not easy to do, I'm sure.
Yeah, I will. Well, you might not like me. You might want to click off after this, but I will agree. Armageddon has the same impact. It's crappy on the big screen and the small screen. So,
Whoa, whoa! Not Harry
I hate
Stamper
that.
and the crew.
Oh, I hate that movie.
Not I don't want to miss a thing. Oh
Yeah,
man.
I,
Yeah. Definitely one of my favorite
right
movies.
from the yes. When I went and saw it in theaters,
Mhm.
and soon as they introduced um how they were gonna solve this problem, and I don't mean taking the drillers up to space. That's not the problem I'm talking about. I'm
Yeah.
talking about the nuke splitting this rock clean in half. Soon as they told me that, I was like, wait, that's not how bombs work. That's not how rocks work.
The
I'm done.
funny thing is, to this day, I just never questioned it. I was like, "Yeah, that's how you do it." But now that you mention it, because the way bombs work, it's all over. It's not going to split anything. Now, it wasn't the problem.
Right.
Oh wait, the reason that they had two bombs was just in case the other one didn't work. It would have made more sense if they were like, you have to detonate both from both sides. But
Yeah,
yeah,
that would
yeah,
make more sense. But
yeah.
they were like, nope, here's this bomb. It's gonna blow it up. And one half is gonna go south of the earth, the other half is gonna go north of the earth, and we're good. And right then I
Smooth
checked out. I
sailing.
was like, all right, I'm done.
So wait, were you more of a Deep Impact fan?
Yeah, I like Deep Impact a little more.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
I like that one more.
See, I think it's a good movie. It's just not as fun, if that makes any sense. It's like, oh,
Oh, that's completely fair. Completely.
yeah, it's like, oh, their
Because
impending doom is really impending. There's nothing they can do about it.
right, right. And
Yeah,
Armageddon, it has Michael Bay, so it's gonna have that
right.
fun factor to it, right? There's
Yeah,
gonna be a lot of goofiness and nuttiness and swirling cameras and all the things.
lots of swirling
So
cameras. Once Michael Bay discovered the drone, I think what was it was his ambulance. That movie from I think it was like maybe 2 years ago. That movie
two,
was
3 years ago, yeah.
Garbaggio. But he was addicted to the drones. It was going everywhere. I was like, yo, chill with the drones. We don't need every aerial spin move. Like we're okay.
Yeah. Now see, I'm the opposite. I actually like ambulance, so
Oh,
it's
see, here we go.
it's
Yeah.
I
I
like
mean, it's always nice to see Yahya Abdul Mateen II. Like he's dope. I just
yeah.
wish he would pick better projects.
Yeah. Yeah. I think he got done dirty in Aquaman too. That was
Yeah, because he's a really good Black Manta, like as the character, but making him, I'm not sure if, I think I watched your review and it was the thing of making him like the sub villain to the main villain, and was
mhm,
like, what are we doing here? Like, you taken Aquaman's biggest enemy and made him the sub enemy to somebody else. It's like, okay, if that's what you
right.
want to do with your life, but yeah,
Yeah.
I had fun
Exactly.
with
That's
it,
what y'all want to do.
but
That's fine.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm with you. I'm with you. Sitting in the
Yeah.
theater watching it, I enjoyed it better. It my opinion of it went down after I got home and just kind of thought on it a little more. That's what happens sometimes. Sometimes your opinion goes down, sometimes it goes up,
Yep.
depending on the
That happens a
movie.
lot with me. I tend to grade really high on like Letterbox and then think about it and then grade starts to come down. Sometimes I don't get the grade down until after I put out the review. Like I think I reviewed
Right.
I forget what it was. Oh, Night Swim. I think I put out like a 3.5 stars. And then the more I thought about it, I was like, this is not 3.5 stars. I don't know why I said that. Yeah.
Yeah, it happens. It happens all the time.
Hmm.
All right, I got one more question really
Sure.
before we actually get to the movies that we're going to talk about. My last question for you, you put out a video I think tail end of last week. We're talking about no one cares if you read the book.
Correct.
When you're
Yeah.
talking about right, no one cares if you read the book. So my question to you is, can you apply that same logic to books? Meaning the super comic book fans. no one cares if you've read the comic or know the story backwards and forward. The movie is the movie, and the comic is the comic. Or do you think that the comic book movie has more of an obligation to stick to the source material?
So I think that the comic book movie has to have the spirit of the comic book. Honestly, my entire philosophy about comic book movies and people getting up in arms about like some of the it doesn't match the comics is, for one, there has never been a superhero movie that has followed a comic book line by line, beat by beat. That's never happened ever. Like I want to emphasize it has never your favorite comic book movie, ladies and gentlemen in the chat. It has never followed the Dark Knight. Who was this Joker? Like
Right.
this is not the Joker that we know. This isn't even Mark Hamill's Joker. At all, right? Same thing with Two Face. I know it's following. It's inspired by gosh, what is the name? I don't think I own it. Nope. It's inspired by the Long Halloween, but it's
Right.
not though. You know what I mean? So there's like different parts about it. Like so for me, it's not even that. Yeah, for me, it has to follow the spirit of the comic book. If you look at Infinity War and Infinity Gauntlet, which it's inspired by, they are night and day. If you look at Civil War and the Civil War comic book, they are night and day, but they have a similar concept. So I'm totally cool with comic book movies taking their own liberties. Now, I don't have to like it every time it happens, but I'm
Right.
cool with the idea of it happening in general. So yeah, I'm good with. And the way I view the movies versus the comic books is all of it's a multiverse in my head. All of it's a multiverse, right? So I used to say this thing all the time about the MCU. The MCU is not the 616, so I do not expect it to follow the 616 because the 616 doesn't follow the 616. So it's all like just different iterations, and even outside the MCU, I'm sorry, I know I'm going. Even
Go
outside
ahead.
of
Go
the
for it. Go
MCU,
for it.
the first Spider-Man, the one that we all love, or the one that most people love with Tobey Maguire, organic webs.
Mhm.
The second one that people have a love-hate relationship with, like his dad was a secret, and I know something like that is in the comics, but his dad is a secret agent who used to work for Oscorp, and they built all their villains in the Oscorp. Like that's not a thing. And then obviously the Tom Holland one, he teams up with Spider-Man, has him as his mentor, and there's all this other stuff. That's not a thing. So all these different iterations of movies that we love and enjoy don't follow the comics whatsoever. So I've never been too hung up on it. I just don't want Spider-Man flying. Like that's just his ability is to fly, right? He should still be
Right.
swinging from buildings. You know what I mean? And that's what I mean by like inspired by, but not necessarily going
Mhm.
line by line. Because the one time it did happen, kind of, was the animated DC movie, which was the Killing Joke. And as the voice actors were reading the lines, it sounded awkward as hell. It was just very strange to listen to because comic books and movies are two different mediums and
Right.
they don't translate well. And then the weird Batgirl sex thing was strange.
Oh
So we
yeah.
could just leave
Yeah.
that out altogether.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I know what Kevin Feige said as far as it being the 616, but as our queen Iman Vellani said, no, it ain't. So I'm on her side with that one. And if it is a 616, it sure as hell don't follow it. So
Right.
I, actually I would even say it's the movie 616. It's not even the comic book 616. So yeah, sorry, this is a long-winded answer. Long-winded answer.
No, no, you're
Um,
good.
yeah,
I'm glad you mentioned organic web for the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, because I'm along the same lines with you. You know, and you're inspired by just tell good stories in the spirit of the character.
hella good story.
Um, yeah, but at the one of the great changes for me was him having organic webbing because I always thought it was silly that he didn't.
Okay.
As a kid, even as when I did read comic books, I was like, you know, he can have all the abilities of a spider except making his own web. You know, the
Yeah,
whole idea is far fetched to begin with. Why not just go all the way with it?
that's
But that's
true.
just my 2 cents.
I think that the big thing that Why they didn't do that? Probably one because they wanted to show his genius and Stan Lee doing his thing, but also it's kind
Yeah,
of disgusting. Like it's nasty. Like you just got this web in your veins. Do I want to have a like if I'm Mary Jane? Do I want to have a child with you? You got webs in your veins. Like what's going to happen to our child? Like there's so many questions here that we need to address.
right.
But
So,
but yeah,
and those questions are fair, but me
yeah.
personally, I never thought about it until I saw No Way Home and they started talking about it.
Yeah.
That's the first time I really
Oh
thought
yeah,
about
yeah, yeah. I
those
love that scene.
consequences.
It's like what is happening?
Yes, it's a great scene. It's a great scene.
Yeah, yeah. I love
All right, let
that.
me see who's hanging out with us here in the
Hmm.
chat. We start off with Tiana, who was first. Hey, Tiana, how's it going? She
Hey,
is a
Tiana.
loyal supporter. Yep. Just just like Adrian, who's always here. Also, he says, "Hey there."
What's up, Adrian?
Steve, yep, Steve Moody also saying, "Hey,"
Yep.
and that was me giving an excuse while we were late. Here's James 2021st. He says, "What's up, gentlemen and everyone? How you doing, James?" James has got a great channel. Talks
Nice.
a lot about Criterion and Arrow. So if
Arrow.
anybody in the chat, Arrow video, not Arrow. And there's Adrian saying hi again. The
Okay.
eclectic beard says, "Cheers,
Hey,
fellas."
what's up, dude?
I think, yeah, I think it's the first time I've seen the eclectic beard on my channel. So welcome. Thanks for hanging out.
Yeah, he's come and hung out in a bunch of live streams I was a part of. So he's a good dude, man. He's really encouraging.
All right, cool. Glad you're here. Huck's Pop Culture Cafe says, "What's good, gang? What's going on, Huck?
What up, Huck?
Trivia master. When we getting more trivia, Huck? I got to get on there and redeem myself." Zach is here. He says, "Look at these two cool dudes." What's
Zach
up,
Attack.
Zach?
What's up, man?
Zach is another channel I recently discovered. Got to get you on here soon, Zach. Also, and he says, "Hope you guys are having a great stream." Well, we just getting into it, and so far so good. Says ambulance was good. See, Zach's on my side.
See, yo, me and Zach are like we work together a lot on different things. We agree
Yeah.
once every 10 times. So, but it's all about the respect factor. You know what I mean? We respect each other a
Oh
lot.
yeah,
But yeah,
yeah. You don't have to agree all the time with everybody you
right.
work with or you're friends with. You know,
Yeah,
otherwise we'd all be in trouble. This is capturing the spirit is essential. Yes,
true.
completely agreed. And but it is the 616, and you've already addressed that. And Zach says they said it.
Yeah.
And Superman is here. Cal L. He says Nelly
Hey,
Dell. What's up? What's up?
what is Cal?
And he's Zachariah. He's saying what's up to Zach. All right, let me skim down, see if there's anybody else who has popped in. Looks like we are all caught up. So let's go ahead and get on to the business of the evening, which is talking about two movies, and I will let you introduce the first movie. Tell everybody the movie that you had me watch.
So the first, or oh yeah, so the first movie we're going to talk about tonight, the movie that Dell watched, is called Swan Song. It stars Mahershala Ali as well as there it is. Yeah, it stars Mahershala Ali and Naomi Harris and Glenn Close. Essentially, the movie is about a man who is terminally ill. He has to make a decision because this is somewhere in like the near distant future. It kind of feels like us, but it doesn't. There's a lot of different technologies, but let me get to it. So he has a decision of whether or not he can clone himself and have himself replaced with a identical version of himself, even down to the thoughts, the memories, everything that he's ever had, everything that he's ever done in his life, even his subconscious memories he doesn't even remember. These are all being replicated into this clone of himself. And that clone will take his place willingly, by the way. The clone will take his place with his family, and he has to make the decision of whether or not he wants to go through with this or whether or not he wants to tell his wife that he's actually terminally ill. And that is pretty much the the crux of the film.
So I think the big cog in this machine, or the big that makes the story really difficult, not difficult in the sense that it's a bad movie or anything like that, but just
Mhm.
us working through it mentally
Yeah,
is last part you mentioned. His family can't know what's happening.
at all. Right.
So yeah, if he tells them the deal's off, he doesn't even have the option.
Yeah.
He's got to make this decision completely 100% on his own.
Mhm.
Um,
Which
I
is
guess
the
when we get
difficult part. Yeah.
that is the difficult part. When we get into the end of the movie, I guess we'll get
Mhm.
philosophically where we stand on that.
That's why I love this movie,
But
talking about that part, the philosophical part. Yeah.
yeah, as far as the movie itself, I
Mhm.
think the first thing that's out is another part you said was, it's us, but it's not quite us. So I was trying to place a time for this movie. Is it near future, or is it alternate timeline, or what are you thinking here?
You know what's funny? So I feel like it's near future because a lot of the stuff I'm like, it's it's technology that's advanced, but not so advanced that I feel like we can't even touch it, right? It's also technologies that are also, or it's also some of the aesthetic of the movie, which is their clothes, what they're wearing. They're taking trains. They're doing very normal, like even his job. He's a, I don't even know how to explain it. Not a graphic designer, but he's a product manager essentially. He
Right.
creates different things like I think he creates like ice cream, not ice cream, but I think he creates like essentially when you look at Ben and Jerry's, somebody designed that, and he's the guy who designs how it looks, right? So when so his job is even like I know people who do that job kind of thing. So he has the contact lenses with cameras in it willingly. By the way, I always want to mention willingly because all this when you watch
Yes.
Black Mirror, a lot of this stuff is like which is also kind of the feel of this, except for a little less
Mhm.
dreadful. And yeah, so some of the stuff that he's doing, it does feel near the future. I think the most futuristic thing, honestly, well, besides the cloning, honestly, is kind of the video game that him and his son play. That's where I was like, we don't have that. We're not even close to
Right.
that. But yeah, I think that
Yeah.
it's near future. Because remember when the iPhone came out, to now, the iPhone's only been out since what, 2003, 2005, something like that.
Yeah. It's not been all that long.
Yeah, so where
Yeah.
that went to where it is now is cell phones in general is like night and day. So I think that we're closer to that than farther away.
Within arm's reach.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So it was. I'm with you on that. I was like, yeah, this is kind of a near future feeling kind of thing, but I almost Twilight Zone ish, where,
Hmm.
almost just get a lot of those vibes
Yeah.
in the film. And so I think that was a good decision because it keeps us relating to the movie. We can't really put it out there and be like, oh, that'll never happen. We can't
Right.
quite do that with this film.
Yeah.
We were like, oh, this and cloning has been in the news for years now, so it's like we're familiar with the concept, and we even suspect there are clones walking around now.
Could be.
So yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Hmm.
No,
Yeah.
shout out to all the rappers who went in jail and then came out and we told everybody they were clones. So
Remember Jamie Foxx was a clone for a minute?
Jamie Foxx was a clone. Gucci Mane is still a clone, apparently.
Oh, I hadn't heard that one.
Um,
Okay, that makes sense.
you hadn't
It
heard
doesn't
that
make
one?
sense, but
Yeah, that was
like
a deal.
it makes sense that people would say
Doesn't
that.
make sense, but yeah,
Right.
yeah, right, right. And there's been a few others. Yeah. Next thing was really the for a science fiction movie. There's really two camps. There's one that's really trying to tell what our future is going to be like
Yeah.
technologically, and then there's the other side where it's more like fantasy, like a Star Wars or something like that. That's not
Hmm.
really science fiction. It's just science fantasy.
Right.
This definitely falls into that science fiction realm, and this is the less popular wing of science fiction a lot of times because it's a lot quieter, it's a
Hmm.
lot more grounded. But I
Yeah.
thought that served this movie really well.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that
Yeah. I think
aspect of the film?
I think the moral. um, the moral questions that it presents is kind of where this technology kind of takes a turn, especially since we're talking about human beings. I don't even think that we would, and this is weird to say because I haven't really fully fleshed it out, but if you could clone your dog, you might do that. If you can clone yourself, that's a totally different situation and different question, right? And what you're mentioning about like the technology being or the science fiction of it being a little quieter, this is where like when we're talking about like Star Trek, we don't necessarily think about legislation, right? But when we talk about something like this that feels so close, we're like, okay, so this company that's operating and doing this, how legal is this a black market thing? Like how do people know that they're doing this? Like because all of the secrecy surrounding you having that relationship with your family and not being able to tell them, there's so many different avenues of can you do that? Is that is that okay? You know what I mean? So all of that is kind of like where that plays. So let's say that somehow, some way that they find out that, and we I won't spoil the end, but let's say that somehow, some way that they find out that I, Kenny Sparks, cloned myself, right? And I had written a will, right? The clone had written a will. Is the clone allowed to give away the things that the original had? So that's kind of where we get into the woods with type of stuff like that. Yeah. I don't
Yeah,
know if that's answering your
one of
question
the
at all, but yeah.
I got it. See, you brought up another interesting point with the legislation and all, and I think that was one area of the movie where I had a bit of an issue is that they
Hmm.
like barely touched on it at the
Yeah.
beginning of the movie. They kind of barely touched on it, and then we never really went back to that. And I wanted a little bit more. Uh,
Hmm.
only thing that really came out of that for me was that for all intents and purposes, the clone is you once the deal is complete. Once the transaction has taken place, the clone is you. So whatever legal rights you have, the clone has.
Right.
That's yeah, that's the gist of it that they wanted to really go into. They didn't really get into how it would affect society at large,
Yeah.
for instance, and how it would be executed.
Which is something I
So
actually really liked about this movie. Even though I'm asking those questions, the thing I really enjoyed about this movie is that it never went into that like deep kind of legislation thing. It's fun to think about,
mhm,
but I like that it kept it to just Cameron and what he was going through. Right? We can deal with the
right.
evil clone thing in the next clone movie, but right now we're talking about just like the morale, like the decision making of do you do this or not, right? And I think that that question is interesting enough to make a movie about. And then we can, we can talk about evil clones and scrolls and stuff like that elsewhere. But yeah.
Well, that was another thing I appreciated about the movie is that we didn't go down and go, "Oh, okay, so the clone is evil, now we gotta stop the clone from doing whatever he's gonna do." And, I mean, they hinted at that, towards the end of the movie, and again, I don't
Yeah.
wanna spoil anything,
Hmm.
and b so we kinda get that way because you gotta generate some tension in the story, right?
Yeah.
So
And I
they
think they
kinda
did it in
they
a good
do
way.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, but it wasn't this wasn't Ex Machina, for instance, alright?
Right.
We're
Right.
we're not going that way, and I love Ex Machina, but this isn't what that is,
Yeah.
and I thought they did a really good job, presenting the situation
Hmm.
and letting it play out.
Right. Yeah, I feel like even like I've never written a movie, but I feel like if I were to write this movie, I would be tempted to do the same thing I've always seen, which is have the action scene, have the fight scene, and stuff like that. And there's a moment where there is an argument, but it's not. It's the argument is so human and also weirdly empathetic of one another between himself and the clone that it's like this is really strange because it is they do a really good job of making the clone actually just like him, like you believe that that is him and how he would react in that situation. And I also like the fact that they gave the clone some of his own humanity as he's wrestling with waking up. Like I was here and
Mhm.
now I'm here. Like this situation isn't fair to me either, which is Yeah. So, like I said, I don't want to, like you said, I don't want to spoil or anything like that. But just they did a really good job of like communicating those conversations and stuff like that.
Yeah, and watching those conversations play out, it was like watching. So it was definitely it was like obviously watching someone talk to themselves. But
Hmm.
what if you, the viewer, could talk to yourself on that level where you're actually looking at someone, kind of like looking in the mirror, but then in a way that you're forced to be honest with yourself
Mm, yeah.
because yeah, having the clone sitting there is not quite the same as the reflection in the mirror because the reflection in the mirror is going to do what you do, and when you're talking to yourself in your head, you can convince yourself of whatever.
Right.
So it's a little more concrete than that. You have to be honest now because the other person knows exactly what you know and what you've been through. I thought that was a really interesting.
Yeah. And not to go like into spoilers or anything like that, but when he talks about like you feel abandoned or you felt like you were left behind, like when someone was going through something, like that is exactly what you're talking about. Like he's telling himself in a way, this is how you feel, and he's denying it. Was like, no, I don't feel that way, and then he's like,
Mhm.
maybe I do feel that way actually. It's because you are telling yourself the truth in this situation. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty powerful scene, and then later on when they kind of they reconcile a couple of
Mhm.
scenes later,
Yeah.
and he's sitting there. The clone is apologizing for stepping out of line, and
Right.
Cameron's like, "Yeah, no, you're right." So,
The other thing, like I want to point out, I don't know if you're going to ask about this, so I don't want to overstep at all. Was
not bad.
in that particular scene where they're both sitting on like sitting together, and they're both wearing like the complete like one's wearing black, one's wearing white. Like there's little stuff like that throughout this movie that I absolutely love because it's just
Mhm.
is visually striking how these are these two are the same but they're kind of not, but it's like so yeah it kind of it messed with me a little bit. It's like yo sometimes I'll try to remember like who was who, so they did a really good job with the aesthetics of this movie. Oh, also that forest was gorgeous. I wanted to go there.
Oh yeah, it was. It was. Um, I that was those things that you're talking about though, the difference in the outfits. But I found, and this is a big credit to Mahershala Ali,
Hmm.
the subtleties in their demeanor helped me because I never got them like confused.
Yeah.
I never was like, oh, now I'm looking at this one. Like a lot of movies that deal with clones, they kind of go out of their way to make sure you confuse.
Hmm.
Sometimes they never did that here. They kind of wanted you to know, okay, this one is the clone and this one is the original.
Yeah.
And I thought they did a really good job with that. And again, all credit to Mahershala Ali for pulling
He
that off.
killed it. Yeah.
Because, like you said, he's the same, but just different enough that you can notice that
Yeah.
they're not exact. They're not exact. And
Yeah.
I thought that was really well done.
Yeah, I think the thing that Mahershala did with the clone was the clone felt like he was walking on thin ice the entire time, and one of the reasons why is I'm pretty sure uh I don't know how much of a spoiler. I think this is a detail more than a spoiler. But if basically if the original Cameron said I don't want to do this, the clone would cease. They would basically just shut him down and like pack him away somewhere. He'd probably die. I don't know that, but he would. You know what I mean? So essentially, the clone is almost he's walking on eggshells. He kind of needs this to happen or he
Yeah.
dies, right? And that's something else that was kind of
Yeah.
playing in my head is how much empathy does the original Cameron have for the clone where he's like, okay, if I say no, that person they die. Like now you putting someone else's life in your hands based on whether or
Mhm.
not you want to go through
Mhm.
with it. And I thought that was really interesting as well. Yeah.
And I think he had a lot of empathy for him
Mm-hmm.
to a point up until the actual his actual family gets involved in what's happening. or they're put into the situation unknowingly because, like you said, they can't know anything,
Right.
and then he has to kind of watch.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the empathy kind of peters out. It's like,
Mhm.
wait a minute, do I
Yeah.
do I really want to do this?
Yeah. The
So,
watching had to be the hardest part of the process for sure.
oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
because I couldn't imagine.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just could not imagine. That would be tough.
Mhm. But yeah, what I
um,
think. Good. I'm sorry.
no, go ahead, because I was
No.
going to move on to something else. But go ahead and finish the point.
Yeah, so I think I got off point by talking about other stuff, but essentially, the differences in performances between Cameron and Jack, essentially they called the clone Jack, was oh yeah, no, yeah, I did say it. He it looked like he was walking on thin ice, because he knew what the situation was. But yeah, and because of that, there too, his performances as both was a little different. One's obviously in power, but in the situation, and the other one's obviously has no power in this situation whatsoever, which is really interesting
Right,
in the way he played.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other person I was going to move on to, the next person,
Mm-hmm.
who is actually, I would say, last build, because this is not a very big cast. So I would
Mm-hmm.
probably say last build. Very popular actress, and how much you like her kind of depends on how well you take her normal shtick. And I've now found that I can take her when she's not doing that much better than when she is, and I'm talking about Aquafina.
Yeah. Yeah.
I thought she was really good, and she was helping. Just her presence really was helping Cameron weigh the options, because
Right.
he got to see both sides of her. Because for people who don't know, again, this is not a spoiler. This is a detail leading up to the end of the movie. She's already gone through the process and has a clone in her place.
Right. Yep. Yeah. So I
How,
thought. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, how'd you feel about that?
I This was probably my this is my second favorite Aquafina performance because if you've ever seen the farewell,
Yes, yes,
yeah,
yeah,
so she is amazing
it
in
was
that.
great.
But yeah, but speaking to the farewell and this, I like her when she's more reserved and in that role
Yes,
and where she's just playing a character with a little bit more depth than maybe her comedic roles. Because as I don't know if she considers herself a comedian, she's kind of like in that niche, but essentially, you've heard this before, I'm sure. Comedic actors usually make the best dramatic actors, right? And I
yeah,
think that
a lot of
she
times. Yeah.
is proving that in this role. I love the visit to the original, and I love the way in which she plays. No, I'm not the original. To the clone, and I love in which she
The
plays
clone.
like
Yeah,
the original as someone who has accepted what's happening. And because of that, like you mentioned, it helps Cameron kind of ease himself into that. I was about to spoil something, but I'm not. It's going to help Cameron ease into that. And I just like, I enjoyed the subtlety in which she performed this role. And honestly, if you see Aquafina's name on a poster, you typically think that she's about to do something or be not necessarily over the top, but a little bit more energetic. She's not in this movie. She's sick and she's
hmm,
actually like she's moving like she's sick. She's talking like she's sick. So yeah, I did enjoy her performance tremendously in this. Yeah.
yeah, she was really good. For me, it would be my third favorite of hers. The one in the middle that I would have would be the one earlier in the year, Quiz Lady. But it
I
was a
haven't
similar
seen that. I gotta
situation.
see that.
Yeah, it's a raunchy comedy, which you think Aquafina would be full on Aquafina,
Right.
but they cast it basically stunt casting. They cast her in a much more reserved role and gave Sandra Oh the big boisterous role, and I thought it really really worked for the film. So
Really?
I would highly recommend Quiz Lady if you get a chance.
Yeah, I'm gonna check that out
Um,
for sure. I like Sandra Oh as well. Like she's dope.
yeah, she is. She needs more roles actually.
Yeah.
I need to see more Sandra Oh. Um, Catfight, if you've never seen that.
Did you ever finish
Um,
or did you ever see Killing Eve? I need to finish it, but I saw the first season of
I've not.
Kenny. Yeah, she's great in that. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Another actress who needs more work is Naomi Harris, and she's always great.
Yes. Yes.
And
Yes.
she was great again.
She was
Why
fantastic
doesn't
in
this
this.
woman have a bigger career?
I don't know, man. It's crazy. Yeah. I also
It
watching this movie again, I was reminded I had no idea that she wasn't American. Or unless she's
yeah,
like
yeah.
playing British, but yeah, I had no clue.
N- No, I think she is British.
Yeah.
I think she's. Let's see if anybody in the chat is talking about the movie before we move on, or if anybody else has joined us. And Frisky is here. He says, "Two goats. What up? What's going
What's
on,
up,
Frisky?"
Frisky?
Caveman is here. What's going on, Caveman? He says, "Hey there. Please hit the like button. Thank you. I would appreciate it if you did, guys. That lets that mysterious algorithm know that there's a few people like this. So I would appreciate that." Miss Caveman is here. Yes, they are married. For anyone who doesn't know,
Hey,
she says
that's what's up.
hello. Okay, man, subscribe to Kenny here and IG. Sorry in advance for jokes of the day you may now see. So,
No, thank you so much, man. I
so
appreciate it.
yeah, so Caveman, he's got a good YouTube channel also, but he's on IG. He posts a joke of the day every day, sometimes
I
more
love
than
it.
one a day.
I
So
love
you
it.
may
Yeah.
start seeing those. Zach saying, "Hey to Fritsky," and he said, "Yes, this definitely would be fun to do." So yeah, I'll hit you up, of course, soon, I'm sure. And the farewell is really good. So yes, we are all in agreement that the farewell is
That
really
was
good.
great. Yeah.
Patrick is here. What's going on, Patrick? From Half Cheetah Will View. Sandra O can bring it. Yes, she always can.
Yep.
Sideways, probably my favorite Sandra O performance. Love the farewell and Chris Lady. Miss Caveman says. Patrick, I own Catfight. Catfight is a fun movie. It's her and uh help me out with the her co-star in Catfight, and it
I haven't
sounds
seen
a
it. I got to
lot
see it.
more sleazy than it actually is. It's not.
Hmm.
It's two women, and they kind of get into it. They went to school together, and one is really successful, one's not, and one is real snooty to the other, and then they have this big fight in the staircase, and then the movie goes on from there. So
Okay.
there's three huge fights in the movie between them, but the story around it makes it work.
Gotcha. That sounds good, man. That sounds dope.
Yeah, it's interesting. Not a lot of people have seen it, but I really do like it. And Jack says this sounds like a movie I would love.
I think so.
So, yep. Caveman. So Swan Song. How many movies were named this for this year? It's on my watch list on Apple. I know there's at least one more that I saw.
Yeah. I happened to
Uh,
see one other that was named Swan Song. I was like, oh, okay. I didn't know that.
yeah. Thank you, Patrick. Anne Heche. Anne Heche was the co-star for Catfight. All right. So really, the last character I want to talk about is for the movie is Glenn Close's character,
Mm.
the doctor. Is she a villain? And is if she's not, is there a villain?
So I don't think she's a villain. I do think she's an opportunist, if that makes sense.
Okay.
It's
Yes.
if you go back, because remember, like Cameron is only the third patient that they've ever done this for.
Yes.
So I don't know exactly if that means that they haven't perfected it. It sounds like they've had some success in the past. But if you want to continue doing this business, you have to continue having more successes or and more people like actually agree to do it, right? So I feel like part of it, I felt like the forcefulness of it was of her trying to convince Cameron when he was kind of wavering was, hey, if you quit this, we don't have our third, our third testimonial, so to speak. But
Right.
if you go through with it, your family's whole and stuff like that. So I don't know if it is she's doing this because she actually cares about Cameron and she cares about Cameron's family. That was never displayed. It was never like look. it was never like I love your family. She never said anything to that effect. It was always look at what you're doing to your family. So I don't think she's necessarily a villain, but also don't think that she's purely. I'm trying to think of the word. I don't think that she's purely looking out for Cameron's benefit. I think she's trying to
Right.
continue her business.
Right. Now, she did completely understand that he cared. So
Right.
she, when he was wavering, she's like, "Hey, look, dude, you're gonna go home and die right in front of your family, right in front of everybody." It's basically how she put it.
Yeah.
Several times throughout the movie, it's like, "Hey, you're gonna kick the bucket right there in front of the kid."
Right.
So she just kind of kept egging him on that way,
Yeah.
and so I would say I would agree. She's not a villain, but she has villainous tendencies. I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. I, like part of
Uh,
me did wonder, like, okay, so what if Cameron, like, I won't continue that sentence. So just for spoiler's sake. So
mhm,
yes, I won't continue that sentence. But yeah, it does make me wonder, like, if I
I
do
understand.
this, yeah, like what happens because the idea of the weirdest part to me is like we talked about before, Jack, Cameron's clone, is a real living human being. I say that like that
Yeah,
for a reason.
yeah, I understand.
So when you talk about putting him to sleep, if Cameron doesn't go through with this, what do you mean by that? Like, no, but yeah, I think we know what you mean by that. But that guy seems real. So if you're talking about putting him to sleep, are you and have you put others to sleep? Like, what's so? Yeah, that to me would kind of start to lead towards villainous tendencies if you're just able to put them down like a dog. You know what I mean? It's like,
Mhm,
hey,
mhm.
like even like the idea of facing yourself and skin is the same and all this other stuff. I keep saying this, but he looks real and he feels real and he
Right.
sounds real and he reasons. It's like I don't know if I could just like there to me there would have to be like a clone colony. Like, hey, yeah, y'all are the rejected ones, which probably would lead us to the action movie that we were talking about them not doing. um,
Right,
but
right,
yeah,
right,
so
right.
yeah,
So you brought up another interesting point though, because yeah, we know what you mean when you say put them to sleep. So at that point, it, this goes back into the legality and the ethics of it.
right,
At that point, is it a murder or are you just uh, discontinuing your equipment? I mean,
yeah,
what are we
yeah,
doing here? What is all that?
yeah. Are they a product until they're not?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know.
It's a tough, tough question.
Also, I'm just gonna ask this because we don't know, but in the contract, in the small print, can you like, hey, I can reclaim this clone whenever I want? Like, is that in the contract somewhere? Like, even after you pass, like I can, like, because the thing about having a contract is that it has to be law abiding. You can't just make an illegal contract, right? So anyway, we're getting
Right.
far too. None of these questions are asked during the movie. It's just stuff that I'm thinking about. The movie is very small,
They
very
did
focused
bring
on
up a
Cameron.
contract.
Yeah, they did bring up
Right.
the contract. Yeah,
They did bring it up and showed him signing it.
right.
Of course, we never saw the fine print,
Hmm.
but the way or what was implied to me was that he could change his mind right up to the point the clone is officially
In the
in
home.
place.
Yeah,
Yeah. That's the way that I
yeah.
took it.
No, that's exactly how it sounded. Yeah,
Yeah, 'cause
yeah.
I wouldn't think we talked about Awkwafina's character. I
Hmm.
wouldn't think that she could still
Go reclaim.
take
Yeah.
her place back.
Hmm.
Right.
Yeah. No, I meant like, could Glenn Close be like, "Hey, I want my
Oh,
clone."
yeah, yeah. Okay, okay.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
got you. I
yeah.
misunderstood. Sorry.
No, no, it's all good. It's all good. But yeah, so that's interesting as well. But like I said, the movie gets into none of this. It's just about Cameron and his decision, really. But yeah, yeah, man. I don't think
Yeah,
she's a
that's an
villain. I think she's an opportunist and that could lean towards villainous tendencies depending on the situation.
Definitely depending on the situation, because she would probably have to make some hard decisions.
Right.
Matter of fact, she definitely would have to make some hard decisions
Yeah.
uh, at some point. Because at some point, yeah, she's just gonna have to. I'm not gonna say to you. I'm not gonna spoil it, but and
Mhm.
go and say what I was gonna say. But now, speaking of the hard questions, so now here we get to the philosophical side of things.
Right.
Now, my wife, she didn't watch it with me.
Yeah, my wife did
Um,
watch it with me. Yeah.
yeah, she did. Mine did not,
Hmm.
but it was one of those things. After the movie was over, I was in the living room. She was in the bedroom. I'm kind of busting into the bedroom like, babe, listen, listen, answer this question for me.
Hmm.
So we had this whole conversation, and we kind of were both kind of shaking our heads by the end. So I'm just going to start right there. Do you think you could do it if you were Cameron? If you're dying, you cannot tell your family what you're about to do, but you have the
Hmm.
ability to put a replica of yourself there in the home.
So my wife is not going to like this answer, but I think that I could only because so I won't. There's a scene that causes Cameron to make his final decision, um,
Mhm.
uh, where they're talking about where their relationship is and how it would be reconciled, things of that nature. And when that scene is happening, and he's looking, and he's like, "Oh, my death would destroy her," right? I
Mhm.
I think I would be thinking of my wife and what it would do to her for me to not be here. And I think that I would take it upon myself to potentially make that switch, especially if I know I'm out of here. And the part that we didn't mention about the movie is that Cameron being sick is actively happening to him. Like he's in a race
Yes,
against
yes.
the clock, right? And his body is literally rejecting him. So if I'm feeling the things that Cameron was feeling and those things were happening to me, I would probably lean towards going through with it. It would probably suck. I mean, as I'm sure it would suck for Cameron if he did, but like, yeah, I I and part of it is, so what my wife said about it was it would be selfish for me to do that, which, and I don't, almost don't disagree with that, because I'm reasoning it right, but her reasoning is you're taking the opportunity for me to feel that with you or go through that with you, and you're making a
Did
decision on my behalf. And I'm just like, I hear
did
you, but I also don't want to do that. So yeah, that's the conflict.
did your wife speak to mine? Because that was pretty much the conversation we had.
Yeah, man.
And
Like, and I totally understand where she's coming from. I just, because you know, flip it, right? If
mhm,
I found out
mhm,
my wife was a clone, I would be like, "What are you talking about? What do you mean? Well, no, you're
mhm.
not my wife. You're not my wife. Like my
Right.
wife. So wait, where is my wife? Like so I get this is difficult. This is and that's
Yeah,
why I
it's
love this
tough. It's
movie. But
tough.
yeah, it's difficult. Yeah, because I wouldn't want that to happen to me. But here I am talking about I would definitely do that to spare her. But I think I would be, in a sense, sparing myself from her going
Mhm.
through that, which is more selfish. So see, I'm all over the place.
Like I
Yeah.
said, that's pretty much the conversation my wife and I had,
Hmm.
and, yeah, she was in the same she's like, "That would be kinda selfish for you to do because you're taking that opportunity away from me." And it's even more pronounced, I think, in our case because 'cause we've been married for a really long time,
Yeah.
so it's like you're taking away a natural progression of things if you
Mm,
just decide, you know what, we're just gonna stick this clone right here and pretend that I'm just gonna live however much longer the clone can live, right? Which is
right.
probably going to be a lot longer than, well, clearly going to be a lot longer than I normally would. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's why I said by the end of the conversation, we're both kind of shaking our scratch heads and like, oh man, what would I do? And yeah,
Yeah.
we were in that same boat. Anybody in the chat, if you, even if you've never seen the movie, if you just grasp that idea, let me know what you do, or
Hmm.
what you think you might do. Because I
Right.
mean, none of us really know until we do it, right?
Hmm.
Um, but it's a very very interesting conversation to
Yeah.
have for sure.
For sure. And yeah, I think faith plays into it too. I think a lot of different things can play into that. If you're a religious person or if you're not, like a lot of different stuff can
Mhm.
play into this. Um, I feel like I think I mentioned before. So I might clone my dog, but you know what I mean. I'm not gonna cloning myself is a completely different conversation. You know what I mean. Plus, I've seen
Yeah,
too many.
it
I've
is.
seen too many action movies. You know what I mean. That's the other thing. Like,
Oh yeah,
what if this thing does go crazy? Like,
oh yeah.
you know what I mean?
I mean, we start with invasion of the body snatchers and just go forward and
Yep.
get all kind of craziness happening.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely have that experience. Like, I've seen too many of these movies just go left, so I
Hmm.
don't know if I want to do that.
Yeah.
All right. Um, I'm gonna take one quick look at the chat, and then I'm gonna give my final thoughts on this movie. And
Okay.
since it's my first watch of it, and then we'll switch over.
Sure.
And we do have, yeah, Scottish Scottish Geek guy. Sorry, howdy, fo. He says howdy. What's going on? Thanks for
What's up,
joining
Scottish?
us. And another big supporter of the channel and has become a friend. And this is Big Chris Floyd House Flicks. What's going on? He says peace, brothers. Just passing through to give a shout out. Keep up the dope work. All right, well, check out the replay if you can. And people saying what's up to each other out there in chat. And Floyd says, homie
I
got the
just saw
plug on
that.
the dog cloning. My dog is old AF. I need a new one.
Yo, real talk. Like, I I don't know why I think about this all the time, but my dogs don't live that long, relatively, right?
Right,
Yo,
right.
I once my boy does pass, I will be destroyed. Like that's my guy. So, yeah, if I can get to clone hookup, you know what I mean? I'll probably still be
Understood.
destroyed, but yeah.
But a little easier if you
Mm-hmm.
got another one right there, right?
Right.
Uh, Patrick's is interesting movie, very Outer Limits. Like, yeah, that's another
Mm-hmm.
series or movie that was along those same lines. And all right, so let's go ahead and get to the other movie. And I'm going to be very bad YouTuber for a second. 'Cause I'm going to turn around because I forgot to grab it like I wanted to. And while I'm grabbing it, I always got to
I
show
was
off
looking
this
at that.
guy, the Batman
That's dope.
Steelbooks. Yeah, cost enough, so I got to show it off every now and again.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah. I'm sure them things is expensive.
yes. And the movie that we are going to talk about, the movie that I had Mr. Kenny watch for the very first time, and
Yep.
I'm going to go big screen here for just a second, is In the Heat of the Night, starring one Mr. Sidney Poitier and, of course, Rod Steiger. Lots of us are familiar with the TV show. The movie is pretty much the same premise. You got a black cop in an all white town. However, it's a little different from the show here. Sidney Poitier's character, Mr. Tibbs, he shows up in the small Mississippi town. He's just passing through, actually. He's waiting for a train. What he doesn't know is something that we do is that we find out very quickly that a murder is committed, and this is 1967. This movie came out, so just imagine the time. And well, we obviously have a white cop. He's just driving around and just happens to come upon Mr. Portier at the train station and decides, you know what, black man in this town, somebody's dead. He did it. and arrests him, drags him in, and we find out that Mr. Tibbs is actually a police officer from Philadelphia, and he is the foremost homicide from Philadelphia. And the people in Philadelphia decide that, you know what, you can stay there and help. And Mr. Gillespie, Chief Gillespie, decides he doesn't really want the help, but he's got to get it anyway because through plot machinations, the
Hmm.
widow finds out that he is indeed an expert at solving homicides and says, you know what, no matter what you do, keep the black man on this case. And then the movie goes from there. So, what did you know about the movie coming into it?
I knew two things about the movie. I knew that Sidney Poitier was in it, and I knew that he slapped a white man in the garden. That's the only thing I knew about this movie
Okay.
before seeing it. Like I saw that famous scene where he's talking to the guy in the garden, and he walks. Tibbs is questioning him. He walks up, smacks Tibbs, and bow, smacks him right back. I was like, oh, so
Right.
that's really all I knew about this movie before seeing it.
Okay. Okay. Fair enough. All right. So we at the start of the movie, um, how do you think the start of the movie is executed? Because we're kind of following around the police officer, just kind of making his rounds, doing a lot of nothing,
Hmm.
to be honest
Yeah,
with you.
yeah.
And at this point, are you kind of like, all right, let's hurry up and get to whatever it is, or is it drawing you in?
So what's interesting is so I was really patient with it. I didn't really have any kind of impatience with it. As he's going to the diner first, and he's talking to the guy at the diner, and then he's driving around making his rounds and stuff like that. And as he comes, like he doesn't, it doesn't. It's not a long time before he comes upon like the dead body, right? So it
Right.
didn't like So my only thing was like, okay, so where does Sidney Portier come in? That was my only like question. It doesn't take too long. I thought the interesting thing about it is how Sidney Poitier comes into it. It's like I'm just at the train station. I'm trying to go home. So, and
Right.
I yeah. So I'll answer your questions as you ask them because I was about to go into something else. But yeah, yeah.
No, if it takes you
Mm,
there, just go for it, and I can
mm.
always adjust. It's
Okay.
cool. If you got something else to add, go for it.
So I'm immediately going to get into it. Then the scary part for me, or the thing that watching this movie for me was a very interesting experience because it really felt like I was like transported to a different time. I said a long time
Mhm.
ago in my life I would never step foot in Alabama, and this movie just solidified that for me. I'm from Philadelphia, so and I live in Philly, so this was like, okay, I'm never going to Alabama. Why would I ever do that? But I think the scary thing for me is when the police officer does come across Virgil Tibbs in the train station. It's reminiscent of like at any point as a black person in the South or really anywhere in America, it can happen to you. Like I'm just in the train station. I'm trying to go home, right? And I'm not bothering anybody. I came here to visit my mom, and the cop rolls up, pulls a gun on me immediately, and now he's patting me down, and now I'm going to a police station. I have nothing to do with what's going on here, and it just kind of like
Right.
I don't know why that thumbs up just came up. But it just kind of like it really.
I think your thumb
I
was up
was
as well.
feeling the I was feeling the kind of way like watching this
Yeah.
happen because I recognize it because I know our history, but like yeah, to see it on screen and to actually happen, like it was difficult to watch. Not difficult to watch in like I want to turn this off way, but it was like one of those, oh, this is a reality of how things happen, right? So yeah, and even like I'm sorry, even when he pulls him when they finally get to the police station and he's like and he's talking to the police chief that's in there. He's like, you're just gonna let the prisoner go? The prisoner? He hasn't been
Mm.
read his rights. He hasn't been charged with a crime. He hasn't like even been told what his crime might be, and we're already referring to this man as the prisoner. Like that, like all of that was like a lot. But yeah.
Oh yeah. It was definitely a case of presumed guilty.
Yeah.
And, before innocence is not innocent until proven guilty. Is guilty till proven innocent.
Yep.
In a lot of cases, clearly on display with the
Yeah.
beginning of this movie,
Yeah.
and really a lot of times throughout the film they do that.
Hmm.
And so my my next question really then is, does Chief we clearly see Chief Gillespie doesn't want his help,
Correct.
right?
Yeah.
We clearly he's clearly just as racist as everybody else in the town, but he has to have some sort of diploma about him because he's the chief of police.
Right.
So my question about Chief Gillespie though is one of my questions anyway.
Mm.
Does he actually want to solve the crime? Because we see parades, and every time a suspect is brought up, it's like, oh, this is the guy that did it.
Yo, every single time. No investigation, no
Yeah.
nothing. He was walking on the same street as that guy. He did it. It was like, wait a minute. Like, hold on. Can we do any kind of investigation? Like, how many? He pulled like
Mhm.
three different suspects, including Mr. Tibbs, like into the situation and said, "You're guilty. You're guilty." And then yeah, so um, I think that Gillespie doesn't want to be bothered. I think that that's his whole motivation. Is I don't even as he's talking about uh, Virgil Tibbs, like his salary in Philadelphia. He's like, yo, part of it's
Right.
a race thing. It's like, yo, you making $162.32 a week over in Philly. Here I am busting my behind, and I'm not making a quarter of that, right? And part of it is like, okay, you're mad because this black man's making like triple your salary or whatever. But I think it's
Right.
also you're busting your behind. Like he has this delusion of I'm entitled to this. So I really don't want to deal with any of this. So I think part of it is like he just doesn't he's just doing this job because it's a job. He doesn't really care about solving this crime. Like at all.
Yeah. I don't think he does. And on top of that, he just wants to quickly get back to the peace and quiet of the small town.
Yes. Yep.
Anybody who's considered riffraff in the town, he knows who they are.
Yeah.
He knows to find them. So if something happens, you got a few usual suspects to deal with, and that's about it. He
Yep.
doesn't want more than that. Murder's not something that really happens around there. So he's just like, you know what? We got a guy. We got a guy. That's it. Let's move on.
Yeah.
So we see he can't do that. And I referenced the scene where the widow of the murdered person just on the case. And what did you think of that scene when that happened?
Which you broke up for a quick second. Which scene are you talking?
The scene where the widow demands that Tibbs stay on the case, because I thought that was a pivotal scene in the film.
Yeah, I think that is the turning point of the investigation in a sense, right? Or it's the real start of the investigation, because Tibbs does he does say, hey, this dude was left-handed clearly, and he hit him at a 17 degree angle over here, so obviously he didn't right. So he's giving all this detail to her, but I thought that it's not even. I thought that there are times where similar to Glenn Close in the movie we just talked about. There are times where what you can do for me means more than my prejudice against you or what I'm actually after, right? So this
Mhm.
guy can solve the case. He seems to be the only person willing to solve the case. And you guys kicked him out because he's black? No, my husband's dead. I need him back. I need that Negro cop back here. I think that's exactly how she said
Yeah,
it. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
that,
I need, so go get that Negro cop and come back and let's like solve the case because he's the only person who can do it, right? And I think it's more so like that than anything else. I think if he was walking down the street in that Alabama city, she would never speak to him or anything like that. So, yeah,
yeah. And I thought for Gillespie though, At that point, though, that keeps him on the case, and definitely, like you said, that really starts the investigation. And
Hmm.
just as a side note, I thought it was just amazing that he could pinpoint a 17-degree angle.
Yeah, yeah.
But,
This guy is a
yeah,
superhero.
yeah, for real.
Yeah,
I can see 90. I can get 45. Okay, I can get 17.
and that's why it stuck
I would
out
do
to me. I was
that.
like, okay, he got the 17 degree.
Yeah, yeah, you are the guy.
Right,
You're
right.
the one.
You definitely the lead
But
investigator.
yeah, yeah. Um, but I thought Gillespie more or less warmed up to the idea when the I forget the name, but the other rich guy convinced him. He said, "Hey, look, if uh, if he solves a crime, great. He's got to give you the credit anyway. It's your
Right.
department.
I think that was the
And if he
mayor.
can't solve the crime, it's
Hmm.
his fault. So this is a win situation for you." At that point, I think Gillespie kind of turned around, like, "Oh
Yep.
yeah, hey, give him what he wants.
Yeah.
Let's see if he can solve the crime that way."
Yep.
And I thought that was the other pivotal part of keeping him in the movie, even so to
Right.
speak,
And I like that they
where
took their
not
time
putting
to
him.
build all that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. What'd you think of the other officers?
Oh my gosh. So they were as useless as Gillespie was. I mean, even like the first officer
Even
that pulled him in, he was like I said before about the prisoner thing, and then, he ends up getting, he ends up being one of the suspects, the guy who pulled Tibbs in. I'm
Mhm,
like, yo, what,
mhm.
yo, you are just wilding. Like Gillespie is just wilding. So, but yeah, as far as the other cops are concerned, like I said, they're no better than Gillespie. They have no investigative skills whatsoever. Like that part in when he's like when Gillespie is talking to Tibbs and he's like, "Yeah, I don't know what to do here. Like you're the big lead like homicide investigator. I don't know what to do here." I'm like, "Sir, are you a cop or not? Like, are you solving crimes? Like, and I know that like you mentioned and the movie mentions like there's not really murders around here. At the same time, it's like, yo, it's a crime, man. You got to solve it
Right,
somehow. Like, how do you think people become detectives? You know what I mean? They have to
right.
prove in the field that they're capable of it. And he's just like, I don't know. Maybe it's Larry. Larry had the wallet, so Larry did it. It's like, all right,
Yeah, yeah. You get the. I got the distinct impression. Not, I've seen this movie several times before,
yeah,
and it really struck me even more that this is from before a time where everything was standardized in some way.
yeah,
So basically, you're in this small little hick town, and whoever wants to can be a cop.
yeah,
It's
yeah. It's like any
not
other
really
job,
a strenuous thing to go through. Yeah,
right?
yeah. So you don't need any certain skills other than the willingness to wear the uniform and work late.
Right.
That's about it.
Yeah,
These guys they're morons, to be quite honest
yeah.
with
They
you.
were bumbling buffoons throughout this entire movie.
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah, they were. Now, part of that though, I think was I guess you could call it a weakness of the writing, but it is a
mhm,
way to show the superiority of Tibbs's ability,
yeah,
and I thought that it came across very well. Like, if he doesn't solve it, there's definitely nobody going to solve it in this town,
yep. Even
no matter.
in the coroner's office when he was doing he say, "Hey, I need three of these. I need root of this or what have you," and he's telling him, "Hey, I just need you to do this." It's like you guys haven't checked the body is basically what he was asking. He's even like feeling on the heels and the feet and stuff like that.
Right.
And it's like y'all haven't done any of this like at all. So I think you could call that a weakness of the writing because you have people, especially in the position of like at the morgue and stuff like that, who clearly have no idea of what they're doing, and that's someplace I think would be a little bit more education, uh, uh, not compliant, but education needy in order to work at the morgue and do these autopsies and stuff like that. I think you would need that education. So the fact that they're just
Right.
not doing anything at all is kind of wild to me. But
Yeah, it is. It's
it does
really
show the
wild.
superiority of Tibbs for sure.
Right. Right. I'm gonna run through the chat because I've been noticing a lot of Carol O'Connor talk from the TV show. Were you a fan of the TV show? Watch
I
that.
have never seen a TV show. I was reminded that it was a TV show while like looking up the movie. I was like, oh, that's right. It was a TV show. I've never seen a single episode. No.
Yeah, I used to watch it all the time. My mom used to watch it all the time, so I watched it with her, and then it's been in syndication most of my life. It
Hmm.
started in the '80s, but ever since it's been in syndication. So every now and again, I would just see episodes.
Yeah.
Really good show. Carol O'Connor played Chief Gillespie from he was Archie Bunker, if you're familiar
Okay.
with him,
I know the name.
and yeah, Howard T. Rollins played Tibbs, and he's also a really good actor. He was in A Soldier Story. Is like the biggest thing he's probably been. He's been in quite a few movies. That was probably the
Okay.
biggest movie he's been in. Another great movie if you've never seen it.
Hmm.
Patrick says instant classic.
I agree. I actually
Uh,
love this movie. Yeah.
yeah, and he also says they call me Mr. Tibbs.
Hmm.
Fun side note: the sequel is called that is the name of the sequel. Actually, they call me Mr. Tibbs,
Yeah.
and there's even a third movie called The Organization. I've not seen the third one. I have seen They Call Me Mr. Tibbs. Good movie, not on this level, at
Mm.
least in my
That's
opinion.
that's
A
kind of
lot
what
more.
I noticed when I was looking at like Rotten Tomatoes. Like it came out the exact next year, and then the organization came out. I think the year they were just pumping out movies, um,
Yeah,
and yeah, it just the rating just kept going down, down. I was like, oh, okay,
yeah, yeah. The second movie is a lot more generic and gets caught up in Shaft or that era. Even though Shaft hadn't quite come out yet, but it
yeah,
was
hmm,
we're heading in that direction, and it doesn't quite work. And it says, yeah, Carol O'Connor did in the heat of the night to sort of wash Archie Bunker off his skin. Yeah, Archie Bunker was a character you can't today for sure. He was out and out racist, but there was actually some social commentary with that. He wasn't just the racist character. They were using him to have social commentary,
hmm,
but I think a lot of people would get hung up and stuck on the racism part.
yeah. It's kind of how like The Office couldn't come out today.
Right, right. Carl Weathers also did 28 episodes of the show as well. I
That's cool.
forgot about that. R.I.P. to Carl Weathers, just passed
R.I.P. to Carl
recently.
Weathers. Yeah, legend.
Yep. Cal, he did a night TV show so underrated. Carol was excellent. He did a lot of writing on that show. That I did not realize, so that's cool. And no experience. He was learning on the fly. He lied on the application. Must be talking about Carol O'Connor
That's
or
how you
any of
do
these
it.
cops in this movie.
You're right.
Any of those.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah. I actually think of this show when Carol O'Connor's name comes up. Yeah, I mean, he was on it for years, probably longer than Archie Bunker because the show was on forever.
Mm.
His son Hugh played a cop. Yes, I do remember that. He overdosed after the show ended. Howard Rollins
Oh no.
played Tibbs, but he died from drug abuse and AIDS. Yes, he did.
Okay.
He was an excellent actor, though.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that is the way his life went. All right. Uh, Back to the film. Looks like we're all caught up on the chat. So we get to we eventually do get to that famous slap scene where they go visit the guy, and he's well. First, before that, I mean, they're driving up to see this guy, and they got to drive through the cotton fields.
Yo. Yeah. I just. Yeah. Yeah. It was something about those cotton fields, man. Like, and him driving through them, and there still being black people like working them. I just felt uncomfortable, to say the least. I was just like, nah, because my wife watched it with me. Even she was saying like, yo, even though slavery was abolished, there was still people on plantations all the way up until like a certain point. So I was
Yeah,
just like, man, this is yeah. I don't know. It was a weirdly emotional thing. It's like, damn, like I really don't. Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was like that.
it definitely was, and we're meant to feel uncomfortable, and Tibbs is definitely feeling uncomfortable watching, what's happening in front of him as he's passing by them, and I feel that's the beginning of the setup for the whole scene for the slap.
Right.
because then the very next thing we see once he gets out of the car, you
Oh,
know, the
sorry,
Kennedy statues,
you
all of
froze.
those.
You froze for a second. I'm sorry. I think I missed like the
Sorry
last.
about that. Well, I was saying, that all of that's a setup
Hmm.
for and even the next thing that happens when he gets out the car and you see the Mammy
Yeah, yo,
statuettes, and
that
then all
struck
those.
me. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So at this point you're ready for something to happen now as a
yep,
viewer. If you have any sort of empathy, even if you're not black, you're like, this ain't good.
right. Yeah.
This can't be good.
And then the black servant
And
comes out of the
the
house,
guy,
and I'm like, oh,
yes,
Lord, like,
yes,
yo, hmm,
yes, yeah. The guy who owned the plantation and the house, he was definitely giving off slave owner vibes. That's for sure.
big time. Yeah, yeah.
So
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
go ahead. No, go ahead. Go.
No, yeah, I was agreeing with you. He was definitely giving off slave owner vibes. I'm going to call him Steven. I don't remember his name, just Steven from Django. Like he came out of the house with like serving them and stuff like that. I thought like oh wait, I'm sorry. I'll let you set up the rest. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh well, no, I was really going to say, they
Mm,
get into this conversation, and he figures out that they're just there to question him, and he's a big, rich, powerful guy in the town,
yeah,
and and again, you got to remember, it is the '60s, it is the Deep South, and when he's being questioned by this black guy, he just does not understand how this is happening, and he sets out to put Tibbs in his place, and he
yep,
slaps Tibbs, and immediately Tibbs
bow,
slaps him right back.
yep.
And it is known as the slap heard around the world. I don't know if you've ever heard that before, um, because it's a watershed moment in cinematic history, because that nothing like that had ever graced the screen.
Interesting. I can
But
imagine
so
for sure.
yeah. So, and this is on top of a couple years earlier, Sidney Poitier having done Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, another watershed moment for cinema dealing with race. So you're watching this for the first time, and now you finally have context for this slap. What's going through your head then?
Yeah, so like there's a couple things that happened in the scene that were really interesting to me. The first is them the slave owner offering them a drink, right? And the cop says no, but Tip says yes, which I thought was really interesting because it almost felt defiant in a way. Like I know that a
Mhm.
lot of times people go to places and you don't want to you're there for a certain reason. You're not trying to be here all day. You're just here for the information, right? But the tip saying yes to the drink and asking for, I think it was like lemonade, right? From the black servant. I
I
thought
think it was, yeah.
all of that was really interesting, especially like having the black servant go and get it. It was almost like separating Tibbs from the people in the cotton fields and even the house person of color. Um, the
Right,
I'm not going to say it on your stream, but yeah, even the house
right.
person.
I
Um,
got you.
and I thought that was because it continues to establish like I'm not one of them. Not that he's not black, but I'm not the person that you normally deal with. Like I'm from Philly. I'm
Right,
a lead investigator. I get paid 162 dollars or $132 an hour or a week, right? So like I'm not one of these subservient people. So as all of this is building up and Tibbs is not cowering, not talking to him, asking him for his unmitigated favor or anything like that. He's like, "Yo, did you such and such, and did you own this, and did you like?" I forget the questions, but so as he's walking up to him, Tibbs has established himself as I am me, right? Like I'm a human being just like you. And the guy's like, "Whoa, you think you're on my level?" And he walks over to him and Tibbs slaps him right back. And first of all, I loved it. Happy Black History Month. First of all, I
right.
loved it. I love that moment. And honestly, it was a situation. So I had seen the scene before, out of context. Uh, but the question that the rich guy asked Gillespie, like, "You're just going to let this happen?" It's like, or
Mm.
what are you going to do about it? Like, I don't know what I'm going to do about it. All of that was really interesting because no matter what or how Tibbs feels about himself, it could go left and it could be
Right.
excused, right? He could not make it out of this situation. That is a very real
Right.
thing that they have established throughout the beginning of this movie. So, seeing it in context, I thought it was really interesting. What I find more interesting about this situation is that it ends up playing no role in the rest of the movie. That's what I found really interesting about it.
Go ahead, finish your thought, and I'm gonna pose a question for you to see if
Yeah,
it did. But go ahead.
sure. So yeah, like the rich owner is essentially not even a part of who they found the killer to actually be, right? It's a whole separate
Mhm.
situation, a bunch of different relationships, and I mean the movie's old. I don't know if I'm trying to like avoid spoilers, but the movie's like
Mhm.
67. Um,
Yeah, it's a
yeah,
really old movie.
yeah. So even so, it's like okay, he doesn't really have anything else to do, so his character doesn't really have anything else to do with the plot other than establishing even further Tibbs' character as a strong, like, I'm not the you play with, right? And I think that's important, but I thought that we were going to come back to the rich owner. I know that he had a relationship. He didn't like the guy who was trying to build the factory in the town, and that's very real. But he also had nothing to do with the guy's death. So that's why I was kind of like, okay, so when are we coming back to that? Because in my mind, he's the bad guy, right? I'm like, okay, he's the bad guy. We're coming back to get
Mhm.
him. I've seen Beverly Hills Cop. You run into the rich person who looks shady. They are shady, right?
That's the
They are
guy,
the
right?
villain, right? That's the guy. So, so yeah, so yeah, that's my only thing. It was just like
Okay.
okay, when the credits rolled, I was like, oh, we never went back to that, did we?
Okay. So
Yeah.
now, no, we didn't go back to him in that sense, and
Hmm.
I think it served a couple of purposes. You touched on one with Gillespie. I thought it gave him another level of respect for Tibbs,
Okay.
whether he liked him or
Yeah.
not, but it kind
Yeah.
of elevated his respect. Now, narratively, I don't think obviously we didn't directly go back. He never got to come up in that sense,
Hmm.
but just from a logic standpoint, because very soon afterwards, there are some guys following Tibbs and chase him into a train station,
That's
abandoned end of the
right.
train
Yeah,
station.
okay. Yeah.
How did they find out about this? Why are they there all of a sudden? Because
Yeah.
Tibbs has been rolling around town for weeks, but he hasn't really had any big problems. He's got some side eye and some smart mouth,
Yeah.
but this is the first physical threat, and it so happened to come fairly soon after this whole
No, I think you're
incident.
right. I think you're right about that. I think that those two do have a direct correlation. I don't know how I forgot that or didn't recognize it, but yeah, yeah, those definitely have a correlation because there's no one else that he has run into that would be doing this, right? Not even the other cops have been like,
Right.
"I'm going to send my guys after you." So yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, the other cops, they were too busy just not working, so they
Right.
weren't worried about it too much. Um, so we've arrived at the end of the movie. We got well, no, not quite at the end of the movie because we do have this whole situation with the young girl who lives in the
That was
house,
just weird.
and how yeah,
Yeah.
and how the cop that you mentioned comes to be a suspect in all of
Yeah.
this. And it was because it's been a while since I've seen it, so I've forgotten how she
Mhm.
connected to the plot.
Yeah.
And then when she did, I was like, oh, that's right, that's right, and that was weird. A lot of things were kind of going through my head, but what about you when that
So
happens?
I have to actually seek some clarity because I think she's the girl who was standing in the window in the beginning of the movie, like
Yes,
with no shirt on,
absolutely. Yeah,
and she's
absolutely.
apparently 16.
16, 17, something like that. Yeah,
What are we doing? Like that? Yeah,
different
like
time.
yeah, right. I mean, like even like yeah, it's a different time for sure. I mean, like even like showing this 16-year-old in the window, like what are we doing here? So that's kind of like my only issue with it. Like I understand like these weird um situations definitely happen. But even for, like for the director said, "Hey, I'm gonna have you pretty much bare chested in the window, and you're 16." I don't know how much I love that decision.
Right.
But so even with that, uh, I think that it made sense for them to essentially come back to her as a main character, because otherwise it just seems gratuitous. Even seems gratuitous
Mhm.
either way, but it just seemed gratuitous just to have that happen. So it did apply to the plot, and it did help us be, oh, you know what? He did drive past her window in the beginning of the movie, the cop who got accused, right? So I thought that them coming back to it, I was like, oh, okay, cool. So this is kind of that subplot thing that's coming to fruition. Overall, I don't I don't know if I love the way it was executed. Because there was a point where I was a little confused by the whole situation. Because I just asked you,
Mhm.
was it the same person? Because when she comes into the police station, she's not dressed provocatively at all. Actually, here's the thing: the woman in the beginning, who is apparently this woman, I thought she was a grown woman.
Right, right.
So she don't
And
look
in
16 at
fairness, I
all.
think the actress was grown, but the character is not.
Right. So, right. So yeah. So as she came into the picture, I did get a little confused. Like, okay, I didn't connect those two. I thought it was weird, and then I connected it at the end. As they were talking about, you drive past, like Tibbs was like, "Why did you avoid driving that street? Like you usually drive down that road, right? Like we know that you went out of your way to not drive down that street." Yeah. So not sure. Strange. Very
Okay.
strange.
Okay.
Even like him getting arrested for it was also strange, only because the cop, Gillespie, still didn't do any kind of investigation. It was just like put him in the
No.
jail. It's like, dog, what are you? Even your own like
Yeah.
coworkers, you just
Yeah, really, right? And
anything to
it
get rid
was
of the
one of
case.
those things.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was just another one of those things where he just wanted to have somebody arrested. Was,
right,
oh, you must have, since you didn't show us where you drove that night, you must be the killer. You must be the guilty one. No, that's not how that works, guy.
right,
We,
right,
we gotta
right.
move on. As far as the whole deal with nudity, definitely a different time.
Hmm.
And I a lot of my movie watching happened in the 80s, a lot of my early movie watching.
Right.
And at that time, you know, I being a teenager, being a kid, I watched a lot of teenage sex comedies is what they were, like Porky's, Fast Times at
That's
Ridgemont
true.
High, and
Yeah,
Spring Break, and all those kinds of movies. And at those, you know, most times the people in those movies were depicted as high schoolers, and there was so much nudity, in
that's true.
all those movies.
That's
Yeah, and even if you listen to, they did. I can't remember what the name of the documentary was, but they talked about how in these movies there was actually a mandate for studios putting them out that there had to be nudity in these in these movies, no matter what
wow. Yeah,
they were about, no matter what what the
yeah.
plot of the movie was. You had to figure out a way to get some nudity in there.
Hmm.
So definitely a different time. So that's something where now you they though it would be implied more than it's shown,
Yeah.
unless you're talking about Euphoria on HBO, which is
Right.
in its
And
own universe.
that's where I was like, oh, you know what? I'm doing a little bit of pearl clutching right now. Like I haven't seen movies before. And I was like, yeah,
Right,
maybe I need
right,
to relax on that. But yeah.
yeah. Let's see what people are saying, because we do have some more comments going on, and uh, this is a great movie to cover. Says Patrick, Cal. Everyone of a certain age remember their grandparents having the heat of the night on TV. Yes, goes on. I swear it was on every night. It seemed like it anyway.
Hmm.
Hats off to bring a classic film to the stage. So refreshing, gentlemen. Thank you, Patrick.
Appreciate it.
All right. Yeah, classic films need love too.
Absolutely.
Um, Trying to think, was there something else I needed to cover, or is there anything about the film that you wanted to cover that I didn't mention at all?
No, so I wanted to know, so when you first watched it, did you guess at all who it was? Because the second time that they showed the diner dude, I was like, it could be the diner dude. And but I had no idea like how it would play out at all because he doesn't even confess it until the end. It was like, oh, that's how that happened. But it was like when I'm
Right.
watching a movie, like and especially like a murder mystery kind of thing, I am like looking at everybody, and it's the fact that he showed up in the beginning, and then he showed up again in the middle. I was like, is
Mhm.
it him? Is he the guy? But yeah, I just couldn't figure out like why he would do that. So when you first watched it, did you have any guesses?
The first time I watched it, I he was not the guy that I thought. I was right with the brother
The the guy who sold a
of the
wallet.
girl. Yeah. No, 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 no. Um the same guy. Now I'm confused. But the brother of the girl, the little
Oh,
girl.
right. Yeah.
That's where I was.
Okay.
Um so they got me the first time I watched it. And even the second, even when I not the second time, but this last time I watched it, even I had kind of forgotten who the killer was. And I
Hmm.
think what it is that it's all not irrelevant, not really that important to the story. I think it's
Yeah.
more important that Tibbs solves the crime and proves that he's worthy.
Right. Yeah.
And and it goes back to, for me, Gillespie's most powerful moment was his little speech to Tibbs to make sure that he stayed. Was like, look, you just can't pass up the chance to prove all us white folks wrong.
That was a
And then
really interesting conversation. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But as far as guessing, no, I didn't the first time I watched it, and even after, I kind of forgot who it was because for me, this movie is much more about the journey than the destination.
For sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's when it might be a couple years, and I'll be like, oh yeah, it's that person, and
Hmm.
move on from there.
Yeah. But that conversation
That's where
that Gillespie was having with Tibbs about him wanting to prove white people wrong, I thought for a second I was like, he may be just projecting. Like that's what he thinks Tibbs thinks, right? But Tibbs himself kind of admits that at one point in the movie, he was like, "Yeah, that's actually what's happening to an extent, to a tiny." He really wants to go home. Oh, that was the other thing. Like how many like
hmm
the thing that annoyed. I was talking to my wife while we were watching it. The thing that I would have been annoyed with if I was Tibbs is every time I hear the train go by, I'm like, I could be home right now. Like,
Good point. Good point. I
yeah,
never thought of that.
because even like
Good point.
when he's in the, I think the first time he's brought into the train station or brought into the police station, they make a point to make the have the train sound go by. It's like I'm supposed to like I'm on my train home and stuff like that, and they make up and then
Mhm.
they do it several times throughout the movie where it's like he goes to the train to go home. And then Gillespie picks him up at the train. He goes back to the train for another reason. I think he's kicked off the case or whatever. And then they go bring. I think he's
Right.
brought back from the train station a couple times. And I'm like, every
Several
time
times.
it's like,
Yes. Yeah.
yeah, it's like every time it's like, I could be home right now. I'm in Alabama. Y'all are racist. Y'all don't like me. Half of y'all want to kill me. Like this, like I could be home right now.
Right. Right. So
Yeah.
that you've opened my eyes on something that I hear obviously the train sounds in the movie, but I never put the
Hmm.
two and two together and be like, you know what, that train going by might kind of hurt nerves a bit. He should be on that train. So I
Yep.
thank you for that. I appreciate that. That is definitely a good point. And there was something else you said and it just went out of my head just that fast. Oh man,
Him proving to the white people that he's worthy. Him project. Gillespie projecting. I said something
projecting.
like
Yes,
that.
that's what it
Yeah.
was. It was projecting. So I never really got projecting to that
Hmm.
for me.
Yeah.
It was one of two. There's actually more, but one of two big Jedi mind tricks in the movie, for
Mm,
lack of a better term.
yeah.
One here, Gillespie just kind of you know reverse psychology deal, doing that kind of deal to him. Hey, with this, I know what to say to get you to stay. And then the other one was Tibbs. to the cop that we got to drive him around on the route, because he's like,
Yeah.
Gillespie won't like that, and he's like, "Are you gonna let Gillespie? You in right? You know how to do this." It was very much, these are not the droids you're looking for. It was very
Right.
much that.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
so that's the way I took it. But projecting is
Mhm.
definitely an interesting,
Yeah.
interesting
Well, I was
takeaway
saying,
from
like,
that. Go
initially
ahead.
I thought he was projecting, but Tibbs admits it himself at some point in the movie. He's like, "No, that's real. That's actually what's happening. I do want to prove these white people wrong, that I can solve this."
Yeah,
But yeah.
yeah. Because his reaction when Gillespie said it, his whole reaction was like, "Damn, he got me."
Hmm.
But yeah, all right, let's do this. So I really really appreciated both of those scenes. Um, if there's nothing else in particular to say about the movie, I'm going to turn the stage over to you and get your overall thoughts on the movie. If there's anything else you want to touch on, go ahead and talk about that. But basically, how much you liked the movie or didn't like the movie,
Sure.
and I hear all stage is all yours, sir.
Awesome. Yeah, so essentially, in the heat of the night, rather, is an incredible movie. I had a great time watching it. I love mystery movies in general, but this one had some added weight to it, especially with me. This is my first Sidney Poitier movie I've ever watched in general, so actually getting to see him go like through this role, and a role I believe either here or the person who played Gillespie actually won an award for, it was really dope, and I love the slow burn of it. I love how much time it took with the. I love how much time it took to build up the characters, build up the story. So then, when the stage was finally set, they could just play around and go through it. I also love all the symbolism and all the. Yeah, I'm sorry. I also love all the symbolism and the communication of different themes as we're driving Tibbs throughout the town, especially when we're going through the cotton fields, when we're talking to I was about to call him a slave master, but essentially. And that whole scene, like, I love all the little things that this movie had touched on in a very loud way. It didn't shy away from it. It's like, no, it's in your face. So yeah, this is a movie I absolutely love. It just shows me that you can find movies in any era that are worthy of watching. No movie is too old to be appreciated, especially if it's good and it stands the test of time like this movie did. So yeah, in the heat of the night, 5 stars all across for me. Love this movie.
All right, cool. I'll take that as a win. And Rod Steiger, who played Gillespie, he won the Oscar for his performance. Um, and one of the last things, or the last thing you said, basically, there's movies in every era that you can watch and appreciate and love, and that is so true. And I got to reiterate that. A lot of my audience is quite a bit younger than me, probably around your age. You're in your 30s, is that right?
Yeah, I'm 33.
Okay, so yeah, a lot of my audience is in that age range, maybe even a little bit lower. And a lot of
Hmm.
times, and people who watch me on YouTube, not so bad because they're movie buffs like me. But in real life, people I know personally, if I put on a movie from 1967, they're like, dude, why are you watching this old stuff? We got all these new movies out here. Why are you gonna watch something like this? But because there are movies you can still watch and appreciate from era. So I appreciate you
Absolutely.
saying that. I skipped out on was giving my thoughts Swan Song, so I'll just briefly say that you can take that as a win. Also, I really enjoyed Swan Song.
I'm glad.
Um,
Yeah.
I yeah, I wouldn't quite go a 5 star. I would go a 4 star,
Hmm.
and this is one of those movies though. Almost no matter what it is, the questions that it raises are better,
Mm.
and
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
yeah, I really appreciate that. So and it's hard for sometimes for those movies to be just good movies because they still have to narratively tell a good story, and it does that very well. Great performances, Mahershala Ali. We talked about Aquafina also. Glenn Close. We didn't really mention her performance, but she was good because
And
she's Glenn Close.
yeah, she was great.
And Naomi
Yeah.
Harris. We did.
Hmm.
Um,
Yep.
so I really enjoyed Swan Song. Also, um, that's really it. So, good
Can
sir,
I
if
actually
you
say
don't
something else about
mind,
Swan Song real quick?
yeah, go for it. Go
In my
for it.
personal opinion, it's Mahershala Ali's best movie. And
Mm,
part of that is
okay.
because he's the leading man in not many movies at all. For a two-time Academy Award winner,
No,
he's
no.
he. I think he's led two movies like Green Book, which I think he plays supporting in that actually. And then there's Swan
He
Song.
wants,
Maybe there's
of
another movie
course.
I haven't seen, but I know Moonlight he was supporting as well. That was his other Oscar, I believe. So yeah, I think that
Yes.
I can't really think of many Mahershala Ali led movies, and it might be his best movie that he's led by default, actually. But yeah,
Yeah, because I'm
he's
thinking as you're saying it, I can't think of any that he's actually led other
which is
than this
wild to
one,
me. Yeah,
which is crazy. And yeah, it's crazy. Moonlight, phenomenal movie that
yeah,
I would probably stick to this as his overall best movie, but it's definitely not one he led. I mean, he's barely in a third of the movie,
yeah,
and
yeah,
but his presence looms over that movie.
yeah. And I also thought he should have been
Um,
nominated for a Swan Song because his performance is that good.
it
Even though
is.
it seems like nobody
It's
saw
just
it.
one of those
That's the
movies.
other thing.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Nobody
Yeah,
saw it because I remember when the trailer came out a couple years back, and it was like, oh yeah, that's pretty interesting. I want to see that, and then
mm,
I forgot about the movie, and it never popped up like, oh, Swan Song is streaming here or there
right.
or whatever. So I never really went back to it. So when you had that for me to watch, like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, I get a chance to watch that. Now we do have a couple of other comments before we get out of here. So let me see what's out there. Sydney is a master. Yes, he is, and he's got a big filmography. You said this is your first movie of his that you've
Yep.
seen.
Yep.
I mentioned Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. That's a
Hmm.
great one. To Sir with Love, another movie, and then he's got those movies in the '70s that he did with Bill Cosby. But he did some movies with Bill Cosby. They were like a McDuo for a little while,
Okay.
and they're a lot of fun. Buck and the Preacher is a well-known western. I haven't seen that one, but I've heard that one's really good. But yeah, he's got Raisin in the Sun. That's another all-time classic. Not
I
sure
don't
if
think I've
you've
seen.
ever read that Players.
No, I'm
Yeah,
just aware of it. I've never done any of it. Yeah.
yeah, he's got a lot out there. Rod Steiger won the Oscar. Like I said, thank you, Patrick. It is in the building. What's going on, Emmett? He says, "Have you seen the Super Bowl? Who did you root for?" I did watch the Super Bowl.
I
I
did too.
wasn't really rooting for either team. My team was home long ago.
Who's your
Um,
team?
but I'm a Giants fan,
Okay.
so we're like mortal enemies. You and I, we're
Yeah.
mortal
Yeah.
enemies. So that
Yeah. Yeah. I'm an Eagles
but
fan. Disappointing.
yeah, but I had a good
Disappointing
time
end.
with the game last night, though.
I did too.
Are you?
I was rooting for in the beginning. I was rooting for Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, just because Andy Reid, like you said, Philly. And Patrick Mahomes is a black quarterback, and he'll be a
Yeah,
three-time Super Bowl champion as a black quarterback, which is amazing. But as
yeah.
the game was going, I started rooting for the 49ers because I wanted them to pull it off. Like, it was like, yo, you guys can do it. Like, you're close. And then Patrick Mahomes was Patrick Mahomes at the end. It was a great game towards the end. Yeah, it was.
It was, and I was watching it here, and I was like, I told the people who were here with me, I was like, when we got to halftime and it was 10-3, San Francisco's in trouble. You can't run
Hmm.
up and down the field the whole game and not score points.
They had so
You,
many
you just
chances.
can't.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But we can move on. Otherwise, this turns into a football
Right.
stream. So we can do one of those another time.
Hmm.
And for anybody who is a football fan, or even if you're not just a movie fan, I do have a video where I do a fictional football team. I just released a couple days before the Super Bowl. It has all movie characters on an
Oh,
actual football, not an actual football team, but in positions by position. So we have quarterbacks, running backs, line, all every position on the football field. So
oh, that
check
sounds
out
dope.
that video. A lot
I'm
of fun
definitely
doing
checking
it,
that
and of
out.
course, those videos you spend the most time on, nobody watches. But
That
go
is
ahead
for
and check
damn
that one.
sure. Yeah, that is definitely true.
Yeah, yeah. Emmett also says, "Do you have the movie 1999 from 1999? The Wood, I think, is what he mean. I do have that movie on DVD. I don't know if have you seen that movie, The Wood? And it's
Um,
WOOD, not W.
yeah, that's I thought.
Omar
I'm
Epps.
pretty sure I've seen that movie. It's been a couple well, yeah, 1999. It's been a couple decades, so I don't remember any of it except for that black people are in it. But that's
Yeah,
about it. Yeah.
it's a good movie.
Hmm.
It's a good movie, and Pat's giving me a hard time. The Giants, hey, I'm a New Yorker, man. What you
Yeah.
want?
You gotta root for your home team. It's weird to me when
Yeah,
people are
my
like, "Yeah, I'm from." I had a friend in high school who was a Broncos fan, and he was born in Philadelphia. It was like, I was like, "What are you talking about?" It was like, "Yeah, one day I was watching the game and I just saw the horses on the side of the helmet, and I was like, I like that team." I was like,
oh,
"What?"
okay. I was thinking John Elway fan or something, but okay.
No, he's like, I saw the horses
It's
on the side of
interesting.
the helmet. I was like, "Oh, okay, interesting."
It's cool. I look, my as a little kid, I was a Cowboys fan
Hmm.
because at the time when I was growing up, it was you were Cowboys or Steelers fan, and the Giants were terrible, and the Jets were terrible. And then I was like, you know what? I have two teams in my area. Let's pick one. The Jets always sucked. Let's go Giants.
Hmm.
And when we had Lawrence Taylor also at that, so I was like, yeah, we're gonna do that.
You picked him at the right
So
time.
yeah,
That's for
Pat,
sure.
that's what yeah, I grew up in New Yorker, so that's what it is. All right. So, Mr. Kenny, if you don't mind, go ahead and tell the people what you have coming up on your channel or anything that you want them to know about you.
Cool beans. So, my name is Kenny Sparks. My channel is also called Kenny Sparks. You can find me at Kenny Sparks YT. So, what I have coming up is I have a movie review for a movie called Origin by Ava DuVernay that's coming out tomorrow, and I also have interview for Meet the Movie Tubers with another YouTuber named Epictastic Joshua coming out on Wednesday, and Friday, Madam Web review. But the thing that you might most be interested in is the Unseen Movie Marathon series, where I watch one movie from each year between 1970 to present, a movie I haven't seen. Right, so currently we are on 1976. People who watch my channel have voted, and the 1976 movie will be Network. So I'm really excited to watch that for the first time and then review it. The other choices were King Kong from 1976, which starred Jeff Bridges, as well as gosh, what was Logan's Run, which I also haven't seen that either. So the Network one, I also had the most recent one I did was One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, starring Jack Nicholson. That review is also out on my channel now. And going backwards, it's One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, then Shaft, The Mechanic, and geez, the I'll drink your blood, and and the original Exorcist. So those are the movies I reviewed in that series so far, and yeah, so that's really everything. So thank you so much for having me on, Dell, and look forward to working with you next time.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it. I had a good time with this. Hopefully, you did as well. Hopefully,
Yeah, man, I
everybody
had a great
watching did
time.
as well. And that is really all I have, guys. So I will catch you on the next one. The next movie swap I have is actually going to be at the end of this month. I'm setting the date in stone over the next day or two, so you'll get that. But it is going to be with Jagoda Blue, who is, I don't want to call him a former YouTuber, but not active anymore, but still a beloved member in our community. So I'm looking forward to talking movies with him. That's
Nice.
all I have for you guys on this one. We will catch you on the next one. Bye.